And we are live. I'm going to be checking the audio here in a second. But hi, guys. Eric from Worlds Overrun Creations and Terrain. We've got David and we've got James with us again tonight. And it seems like the audio is going to catch up on the other side. All right, cool. So hopefully that does its thing. Let me see here. So again, just like the other night, we're going to be talking about and showing off some of the content for Worlds Overrun for the next Kickstarter. So let's see here. Let me just organize some stuff, guys. I got to do like 10 things at once, which is how it always is. Even when Kirk and I are doing Molds and Monsters, which is my regular podcast, there's always 100 things going on, and it's all happening all at once.
Yeah, just on your end, though, never on Kirk's.
Yeah, I've got to push all the buttons, and yeah, Kirk just sits back and has a drink or two. Yep. For those of you that don't know, I work for Collapse Industries also, which is a figure and statue making company, amongst other things. It primarily focuses on 3D printing. We do molding and casting there as well, but it's it's probably one of the best jobs, and I'm the lead artist there, a lead artist, and I do a lot of the designing. But that's just so you guys know, there's more than just Worlds Overrun. So we got Collapse Industries, which is where I do statues and characters and figures. Molds and Monsters is our podcast related directly to that content, where we interview artists who either design statues or miniatures or do molding and casting, and we have painters come in. In fact, Ed Bradley came in. He's a painter. He's painted for Sideshow, toys and miniature or toys. I don't think they have miniatures. So we do a lot of different stuff like that. And Worlds Overrun is just it's my terrain business that I started last year in October. So what we're doing tonight is I'm going to try and I got to run a few things that are going to be slow and clunky. So I'm going to field some questions while I try and get caught up on the clunky part of what I'm doing tonight, and then hopefully we'll be able to lay out some of the content around Grove. Now, so let me show you guys what I'm doing, and we'll get started. And anybody, David or James, if you guys have questions about what I'm doing or how I'm doing it, just let me know. Just so you guys know, these are some of the trees for Grove, and it looks like a nightmare because, well, I've got all the files open. This is just a smattering of them, and this is just for tonight's demonstration. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be reducing these or decimating them because they're really dense. So I'm going to do that first. It's going to take a few minutes, so I need to buy some time with some conversation. David, I got to ask you, where is your hobby shop going to be located, or where is it located?
Well, it's an existing shop that I'm buying from the owner. I've known him for 10 years since he's owned it. he's turning 70, so he figures it's time to really retire. But it's in San Antonio.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And it's basically a plastic model shop, but he has a lot of figure modelers. He buys direct from Andrea figures, and anything else he can get in, he tries to.
Nice.
So, and then with the contacts that I've made through the years and building garage kits, I'm hoping to get more of the garage kit stuff in there. He has a lot of mini painters that come in, mainly for paint, but looking at this terrain, it would be perfect for people, even if they don't want to game with it, just to add to their minis to make a nice looking base.
You know what? I'm right there with you. In fact, when I finished up the last Kickstarter, which I think I did very early in the year, I think it was in January or February. I had run a survey, and I asked the community, what would they use this stuff for? And just out of giggles, because Kirk does so many dioramas of ships and battle scenes and what have you. I asked, I had dioramas on there besides gaming, and I would say all but a handful of people that filled out the survey actually checked off dioramas as well as gameplay. So for me, that's that means that there's a lot more going on in the market um, than just tabletop gameplay. I mean, and that's fascinating because you from my perspective, when I design a product, whether I'm designing it for a specific end use or not, it's usually the things that people use them for that you don't expect that make me most happy about the product, because it means that it's not a one-use thing. So yeah, no, that's really exciting. By the way, what do you like to use for paints? Because Kirk and I are associated with Vallejo, and I also use I kind of prefer besides Vallejo, I'm really kind of interested and prefer the Createx Tim Gore Bloodline.
Okay. Depending on what I'm painting, I've got like 3 drawers full of Vallejo. I've been using Vallejo for years when I do minis or anything that I'm hand brushing. I've used some of their Model Air stuff. I like it. It sprays really nice. You do kind of have to add a retarder, especially if you're spraying for a long time or trying to get really thin lines. I have some of the Tim Gore Bloodline stuff and a few of the Garage Kit colors and the old Badger Freak Flex. All that's airbrush ready. And, I love all of those. The Tim Gore stuff definitely needs the retarder with it also, or reducer.
Yeah, do you get a little bit too much tip drive with it on your end?
Yeah, mainly because a lot of the times it really shouldn't be my primary airbrush, but I use a custom Micron for doing almost everything, even spraying primer.
I have a single Iwata here. I think it's I can't recall what it is. Hey Charles, I do want you to contribute here, but I'm gonna ask you to mute yourself until you have something to say, because I'm picking up some feedback on your end. Just so you guys know, this is Charles. Charles, this is David's one of our friends from Collapse Industries. He purchases products from us and what have you. He actually is just buying a hobby shop, and Charles is the gentleman out in the middle of the country who owns and runs a hobby shop and has a bank of printers. He was the gentleman I was talking about, and
Cool.
He's been influential in trying to help me manage the product a little bit better, because I'm an artist and not really a business management is not my thing, and he's been trying to coach me a little bit, and it's been very nice of him to contribute his time. So
yeah, I can make you laugh a little bit, Eric. I heard you talking about how people come up with ideas of using your stuff for things you didn't plan. I had a lady who didn't know anything about miniatures pick up one of your little mini thorns off the thing, and she's like, "Oh, this could almost be a sex toy."
Oh God!
Yeah, I laughed. It was like, "No, ma'am, that's not exactly the purpose of it." And she was like, "Oh."
Well, I'm not gonna lie. The thorn in particular was actually designed to have a H.R. Giger-esque feel. And if you know much about H.R. Giger, if you've ever read any of his books or any of the material, when he did the design for Alien, for those of you that are too young to know H.R. Giger or Alien or Aliens, the monster was all about like sex and death, and that was how he kind of discussed surrealism, he was the last serious surrealism from that actual generation. He passed away a few years back. But I definitely pulled influence from him for that part, because I wanted people to look at the table and be viscerally bothered by these alien structures. That's why they're spiny, and they have what we call in art, they have a shape language. The shape language for the world of Thorn is bulbous and spiny, and it's supposed to be a combination of, you know, it's like sex thrown in a with a box of razor blades thrown on it, and it's really nasty stuff. And each world has its distinct shape language. For instance, Strata, the New World Strata, is its main influences are things like, now my software's doing an autosave, so hopefully it doesn't crash. Oh God, thank you. For instance, the world of Strata, just to give you guys, those of you that are hanging out and just watching, Strata's primary influences are things like Strata's primary influences are things like Cloud City, which is Bespin, or Camino from Star Wars, or the Tau, which are these long, elegant curves, and everything is streamlined and clean, almost this sort of like ultra clean 70s feel, and it's a really unique look for an environment. And some of the other environments that I'm actually designing, they follow that same process of picking out a shape language and then incorporating that into all the designs, so that they speak from the same with the same voice. And I hope these ideas aren't too esoteric, because this is mostly art speak. It's like, hey, shape language and figuring out all that stuff. So what I'm going to all right, so I've been rambling. I'm going to go ahead and set these guys up. Now, what I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to be taking them and I'm going to be adding them to the ground planes that they're going to be associated with. So this guy is actually going to be associated with this ground plane. And this ground plane is going to have open lock tiles attached to it. And then I'm going to put these guys around some of the pieces from Grove, but they're going to be all out of scale. So I've got to adjust my scales now that they're all decimated and ready to go. Let me thumb through these really quickly. So some of these are built right in; they're already built into the bases, and this was part of my chore today, which was to try and get some bases built and get these guys all oriented. Some of them are built in. So this is going to be this guy is going to be on a 100 by 200 millimeter base. But I got to double check the scales, but he may come in a variant, which is smaller, like a 150 by 100. And I looked a lot at high altitude trees that are in high altitudes that get hit by a lot of wind and are twisted and deformed. Because Grove is kind of like, it's a very live place with rolling hills and highlands and what have you. So different trees, some of them already have their bases figured out. Some of them, like this one, I haven't figured out his base yet, but we're going to plop that in. We're just going to go through these. And some of these trees are a little bit more exotic because they're designed around real world trees. In fact, this guy is designed around a tree called a dragon's tree.
Hey, Eric.
Yeah.
You got the screen focused on Charles, not you.
Well, that's because Charles is so handsome. We just had to focus on him for 5 minutes.
No. You just do your digital Bob Ross happy tree shit, dude.
I'm sorry, ladies, but Charles has already taken and got kids, and he's mad at me now. Anyway, back to this thing. This is based off of a dragon tree, which comes from I forget exactly where in the Middle East, but it actually grows these weird domes, and the branches are all clumped up. The underside's very basic because we're not really going to see that. You're gonna on the table. This is going to look a lot like this. But this tree, when you cut it, it bleeds red. It has red sap. It's really unusual.
They're indigenous to the Canary Islands, Alex.
Oh, nice.
What is the Canary Islands for 200?
So yeah, some of these are going to be on stilts. This one's going to be on stilts. That's why its roots are built like this. It's got a nice pockmarked feel. I did a little cavity in there. All of this stuff has to print well. So one of the ways that we check this, one of the things that Kirk and I learned about checking prints is to put it on this material and give it just a little tiny bit of color. And I don't know why it's not. Oh, it's not taking because I've got. There we go. There we go. That's too much. Give it just a tiny bit of color, and you can see that. See how it's going to print. This is actually going to be very similar to this print. In printing with the types of machines that we use at Collapse Industries, we usually say you're going to lose about 30% of your detail. FDM's a little bit chunkier, but I'm getting a pretty good handle on how well it reads detail or takes detail off of a given part. So as long as your stuff has got big beefy shapes on it, it should print out just fine. So that's really kind of what we're looking for here. That's why the bark looks really, really rough, and because we want these shapes to print out. So let's see here. I'm going to switch back to my modeling material. This is my display material. I model with this material. ZBrush, this is the software I'm using. I'm using ZBrush. Oh, you guys, this file here, I might open this up in a little bit. Charles took out the wiffle ball bat, put some BBs in it, and started beating on me. He wants stretch goals, so I'm going to try and do a set of floating rocks to accompany the content that we're doing. And this is one of the ones that I started mocking up the other day. So, but I'm going to just show you a different material just for the giggles. So let's see here. This is my primary mat cap that I'm using. Not that you guys really care too much, but this is another one that I like to use, and it really makes things pop. It's actually a little bit, it's a little aggressive because of the contrasts. So this is not a good material to display to clients, because then they get upset when it doesn't look exactly like your renders or your screenshots. But for you guys, this will work, and because I've kind of explained to you what's going on here, I'm hoping you guys will understand that we're going to lose about 30%. So if I do these side by side, if I switch this to my white mat cap again and give it just a little bit of color, you can see if you look at like a corner here, you look at this corner and then look at this corner, you can see how it's kind of be a little bit softer. You can check the bark around the cavity here. You can see how the cavity is going to print, but it's going to be a little bit softer. And that's really just a contrast thing. And Kirk and I talk about this a lot because we have to be very careful with when we design stuff for clients. We have to make sure that it's going to read right. This guy's leaves I want to do some more work on, but this is a birch tree that I have in my backyard, and I made him a little bit stumpier because I didn't want him to be ridiculously huge. I'm going to do some oaks too. This clump of trees I just thought would be so much fun. I found a photograph of this. I think it was from one of the deserts. Again, not a desert in the Americas, but a desert over in either Africa or the Middle East. And this is going to be a bit of a bear to cut up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to run a slice through the body of the trees, and we'll put a couple pegs in there, and then I'll have to do a slice through the canopy. So you'll end up with a few parts. This guy, we've already printed one version of this, and it prints out beautifully. But I grabbed it for the display today, and this guy's probably my favorite. And I'm going to just, so you guys can see this. There's since Grove is kind of Celtic, we've got a whole bunch of standing stones in it, and this has got a Celtic arrow that I found carved into a monolith, and then on the backside, hidden over here, there's some swirls, and that's going to be a nightmare to paint, but it'll be wicked fun to look at. And I love what you can do with trees. And I want to show this to you guys one more time. I'm gonna put this guy up here, and I'm gonna pull him out, and then I'm gonna just sort of switch back to my white. This gives you guys a really good idea of how I think about making models, and that's just a little bit too not pink. Hot pink would be good. So you can see right in here. You can see right in here this crevice where the bark is peeled away, and you've got this fissure. That's going to print out really nicely too. So this is the kind of stuff that I'm looking at, and I'm looking for when I do a design. I want to make sure that things are going to work. Now I may have to add some branches in here because I've only got 2, and I've got the main body attached to the underside, but I'm going to probably add a couple more for stability's sake, because these canopies, although they're light, they do need a fair amount of material to make them make sense in the world. So not everything is ready to go out the door yet. The trees are they just take a little bit more time to set up than a lot of the other stuff that I've been working on for this Kickstarter. So what I'm going to do is, because these guys need to get scaled, I'm going to go ahead and grab a file, if I can remember what I'm doing. Yeah, this is the one I want. So what I'm going to do, guys, this is one of the open lock tiles. This is 200 by 200 millimeters. It's going to come in a large format print like this one, which means that this can be printed all as one shot, or it's going to come in a split version where you print the individual 100s. That way, everybody can run this. The reason that we're moving towards the 100 millimeter tiles instead of the 150s is a lot of people that I've talked to have already moved to printers like the CR10S series, and they're really happy with it. But the bed sizes are much more accommodating. So I'm going to try and do stuff where you can put 9 of these on a bed and print them all at once. I do need to decimate this before I...
You're an utter madman if you think I'm going to print 9 of those at once.
Well,
you're insane.
Not 9 of this in particular, but 9 of the tiles, 9 of the all. Like there's,
I think there's see the corners creeping gently upwards as this monstrosity prints.
All right, fine.
It's gorgeous though, but holy crap, man.
Okay, fine.
My poor Prusa's cry.
Okay, fine. Let's just pretend 4 at a time, okay? That way you can print all 10. I think there's 10 of these tiles, all 10 of these tiles in one go, and be done with it. All right, so I just had to. Now this guy's already set to scale. Did it do my thing? Oh wait, I'm decimating this. That's why it didn't do my thing. So I'm decimating the ground plane because it's currently telling me it's 1 million polygons or 1.9 million polygons, which isn't right. So, and hopefully we won't have any crashes. We had one earlier. James, do we have any questions, or is everybody just hanging out right now?
Right now, everybody's just hanging out and enjoying the views of all the models.
Nice. Now, I'm not making excuses, guys. There's a lot of work going on. But one of the many things that I didn't put up there that both James and Charles were really kind of getting on my case about was I didn't display enough of the Grove content. I didn't display any of the concept art. I didn't display a lot of things that I really would have liked to. Some stuff went down, some private business and some associated business with individuals, and I wasn't able to get it. I thought about postponing this campaign, postponing the Kickstarter. I thought about just releasing Strata, which, might have been a better bet. But here we are, and this is what we're doing. So I'm going to try and catch up by showing you guys stuff while I build it throughout the course of the Kickstarter. So maybe every other day or every third day, I'm going to try and display content. I am going to get one of the trees out to all my first week backers, just like I did with my last Kickstarter. I'm going to try and release a piece to the first week backers because, well, those are the guys that helped me get the Kickstarter backed, for lack of a better word. The Kickstarter is backed. So it's those first week people. Those are the ones that are my hardcore audience. I want to give you guys something that's from the catalog that you have early access to. So I'm going to be looking at which one of the trees we've got. It's probably going to be the one that Greg already test printed. The rest of them, I have to finish making them before I can get them out to you. And I don't know why I'm having a problem.
So you're saying we get Greg's sloppy seconds?
No, you get the approved asset that Greg has what is the word? There's a word where it's been approved by somebody. It's got Greg's blessing, so we know that it's going to work.
Green lit.
There you go. It's green lit. Yeah, because we were worried about the trees, and we did a lot of talking about how the process was going to go, and I worked it out, and then I showed it to Greg, and he's like, "That should work just fine." And so we did print out one of the trees, which I think I've got a photo of on the site. Is my page showing?
No, it is not.
Oh, okay. Okay, you should have warned me. Sorry about that. I've been just rambling here. How about now?
No, still not.
Present to everyone. You are screen sharing and presenting to everyone. Okay.
I can see it. I haven't ever not seen it.
Weird.
I don't see anything happening on it, but you got the one you were showing that you were going to split into 2 tiles.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on. I just switched to Charles, then back to me, and I'm trying to share the screen.
Blame me.
I see Charles,
Yeah.
so it's got to be his fault.
No. I wanted to jump back and forth and see if I could display the part. What is going on here? All right, so what I might do is, guys, I might refresh the Hangout for myself. You guys, gentlemen, stay here. Let me save the thing that I'm working on. Do we have any questions at all about what's going on or anything?
Right now, everybody's talking about bed adhesion.
Bed adhesion.
You're welcome.
I've got so many people talking to me about different ways to make things stick to the bed, different plates, different glass, different hairspray, papers, just all sorts of insanity.
Elmer's glue sticks, man. That's all I use. Since I ran out of my magical Croatian or Czech glue sticks from Prusa, Elmer's extra strength glue sticks. Done.
Nice.
Agreed.
I don't screw with hairspray or any aerosol or any of that crap. And I have PEI plates on all of my Prusas. I don't care. I'm producing things to sell to people, and everything that peels off my bed is garbage that I'm not going to send to somebody. So if I have to waste, a half a cent in Elmer's glue, so be it.
Yeah, I get it. All right, can you guys see me? I see me.
I see you.
All right, let me try this again. Let me see if I can share my screen. So I just refreshed the Hangout for myself. There we go. What is going on? All right.
Yeah, you're
Thanks.
working again.
Yeah. So what I was talking about before, and I want to come back around to Charles's thing about glue sticks. I'm trying to decimate this part so that I can bring it into where the trees are, and then I want to set them to tiles that I've got associated with this file, and then just show you guys what a piece of grove could possibly look like connected up with Matt Barker's. Is it Matt Barker? Matt Baker? Son of a gun. I'm terrible with names. Matt's other open lock components. So let me just see if I can get this part decimated, because it's been giving me headache. All right, I'm gonna try something here. See if this will fix it. Okay, should work. So James, David, Charles, anybody?
Well, let me ask you this. You're talking about your loss of detail, 30% loss. Are you basing that off of a particular printer or style of printer or brand?
I think it's just a guesstimation that Kirk has come up with based on what we see in the computer, which we can enhance things via the visual, depending on how the light is applied or what materials are on it or how the thing was rendered. And oh, that's just no good.
Dude, that's sexy. I'd print that out. People pay money for that. Just a big polygon mess thing.
I think I know what happened. Part of it.
Polygon world. That should be your next Kickstarter world, Eric. Polygon world.
Actually,
the design would be so damn easy.
Actually, I'm gonna say that I want to do three expansions, and I also want to do my hell world called Inferno. And I don't know if I'm gonna eke them out one at a time, or if I'm going to try and do another big Kickstarter. Right now, the way things are looking, I think I'm going to do a whole bunch of small Kickstarters and try and prepare for January with a big one. So, yeah. And no, to what you said before, I am not doing anything that remotely looks like, what is that game that little kids like to play? Where you build stuff with blocks in a Minecraft. Oh my gosh! I'm sorry. Shoot me dead. That is the dumbest thing ever.
Totally agree, but there could be a happy medium. So I hear you on the whole 30% loss, and I know we've had this discussion, and you want to throw things at me. Some of the best terrain that's out there right now doesn't try to be so hyper detailed, because it's just terrain.
Right.
That's my mantra. It's just terrain. It needs to be pretty. It needs to look good, but it doesn't need to be so friggin' hyper detailed that A, a printer can't handle it. B, a normal painter hobbyist can't paint it and make it look good. And 3, doesn't detract away from what the game is, because it's never, usually the central part is not the terrain. But then again, I have a 6-foot giant, massive 3D printed castle sitting on my counter, so sometimes I talk out of both sides of my mouth.
Well, I mean, if humans didn't have hypocrisy, we wouldn't have much of anything. So, I think that you're right on some level. There's a range of products out there. A lot of things, the slogan the slogan for Worlds Overrun is to elevate your gameplay, elevate your gaming. And I just came up with that for this Kickstarter. But that's just, I'm gonna put that on a T-shirt and on a banner.
There's elevators. Ha ha. Elevated.
Well, you know what? My thought process is that I want to put out a great product. I want to help people like Matt, who's already got a great product, making stuff that makes his stuff look better. But when I see somebody who, I don't know, opens up a 3D package like SketchUp and produces a bunch of boxes and then sells that content out, I feel cheated.
Just because it's listed for sale doesn't mean they're selling it, though.
Good point. But you're right. And I am not their market. Because to me, dude, growing up in the 80s and seeing, the neon worlds where dragons were and all this other stuff, to me, I'm most excited when I see things that remind me of the old days of D&D. I mean, I love the new stuff, but it's like, I want to have those worlds. I want to have these monoliths. I want to have, basically, I'm doing everything that I would do. I'm basically making the things that I would have for myself. Oh. Okay.
P. Q.
So no.
I'm just in your chain.
James sent me a quick message about something that I needed to pay attention to. All right, so this part's ready to go, and I'm going to dump this in with my other scene. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go ahead and auto group this and check for damage, or check for bits. So sometimes you'll get floaty bits, and there are my floaty bits. You see those little pieces of schmutz. Now the software I use to clean this file up will get rid of this stuff, but it's better for me to just sort of hard check that sort of thing. And that's one of the ways I can do it. The big problem with ZBrush, just so you guys know, I'm a ZBrush. I used to be a ZBrush instructor. I love sculpting. I love designing stuff. This is where I do all my work. It's not for everybody. It's not the tool I would even recommend anybody that wants to get into making terrain. Truthfully, there's other packages out there that can do the same thing. It all depends on how you think, more than anything. I am a sculptor. I'm a sculptor, and that's how I think. It's how I design stuff. It's how I feel about the work that I do. So to me, it's the right tool. I think I just put this in the wrong file. Did I put that in the right file or the wrong file? Oh, there we go. Yep, put it in the wrong file. So let's see here. There we go. So yeah, so what I do is I sculpt stuff. So when I got Matt's tiles, extracted the STLs, and I do some schmutzing around with them, but these are kind of like my reference point, my scale reference point, and it allows me to build stuff quickly and to really move through making my parts more easily. And I have some plans to do some more stuff. In fact, there's custom tiles, and Charles saved my bacon once again. There's custom tiles that I have for strata. We actually used a lot of we designed a custom tile to allow us to
Can I finally talk about them?
Yeah, sure, please go ahead.
I had to give Eric a lesson in geometry and whatnot, because he was like, we're gonna do hexagons, and I was just like, okay, but what are we going to do with the hexagons? And he's like, and then I'm going to make roundy things to like make them circles, and then we're going to connect them together. And I'm like, so how are you going to connect those with tabs? Because once two of them are connected, you can't get the other connecting tab in there because of angles. And we both kind of scratched our heads, and I'm like, haha, we do trapezoids, because you can do all of these magical things with trapezoids, because he was going to do different size hexagons and have it just be this over-engineered craziness, which turned into one magical trapezoid tile, which you have to do a little bit of ginger fussing with to get them to lock together. But once you do, like, you can stand on the suckers. They are like the most rigid, awesome platforms. So it's what makes the strata things, as crazy tall as they are. There is like no danger whatsoever of putting really expensive, beautifully painted models on them, being like, oh, holy crap, are these going to fall over? Because there's no way. They are so structurally tight together. They're fantastic. They make me kind of tingly.
Thank you for that. I really appreciate that. I sometimes, and I'm a little embarrassed, I really am, but I want to say thank you to Charles. He did make my life a lot easier, and I felt so stupid. But a lot of times you can't see the forest through the trees when you're designing. You have a vision, you have an idea, you have a clue, and then you realize that there's something you missed, and you have to go back and you have to fix it, and you have to make it work. And it's just like, take a deep breath and figure it out. So sometimes when you're engineering something, or when I'm engineering something, a lot of the times it's going to come down to trying to make the parts work. So what I'm realizing about the trees and this environment is I'm probably going to end up with a lot of the trees being on 100s by 50s. Because they're not supposed to dominate the scene so harshly. I'm going to keep this guy on the large side because he's the one we did print. He's on a 100 by 200 millimeter tile, so he's actually kind of big, which is fine. A couple big trees is fine. What I'm going to do is I'm going to surround this tile with trees and just sort of eyeball them, because this is how I'm going to figure out how the bases are going to be. And I know this guy's kind of big, so I'm going to put him over here at the south end, the west end, whatever it's going to be.
You're going to hate me, but I'm inspired by the fact you're picking up the tree and pivoting it. Please, God, give me the ability to pick up one of those trees and pivot it and put it however I want it.
I think I can arrange that, because I don't want to do the guys. Just so you know, I do not want to do the trees without bases, but there may be some requests for trees without bases. So I may try and figure out something. I may talk to James. I mean, not James. Charles. I may talk to Charles about how we're going to do trees. Right now, I've got them on bases, going on bases, so that they're like this guy down here. Because I really wanted trees that fit into the environment and also had either a ground plane that was flat so you could walk around it, but you could get full coverage or cover from the other side. Let me plant a few more of these around, and I'm going to bring in a ground plane. I'm not going to bring in another ground plane. I'm going to bring in a cube, a stand-in, to give us some idea what this could look like. So this guy, this birch tree, I really like this guy. He's nice and long. I might make him just a little bit taller, because any good forest, because that's what these guys are supposed to be. They're supposed to be the components for our forest. Any good forest is going to have a few shorter trees and a few taller trees. You know, we're just going to plop him right there. So right now, if we were playing, these guys are a little cramped up. What the heck is that? Oh, one of them didn't get scaled. It's that one. I'm going to delete that one for now. Or actually cancel. I'm just going to turn him off. I'm going to put him up top. We're going to turn him off. We're not going to use him. I got to get him done, but we're not going to use him. So we'll take... Yeah, moving the parts for me is really stupid simple in here. Most of these models are 800,000 faces, which is really too dense for most of the FDM style printers. Some people don't even have, the ability to run a 100,000 or 100,000 polygon part. But say, for instance, we had these guys set up like this. You should be able to get your miniatures through this space if this hill wasn't here. But this is part of what I'm trying to do with Grove is, big open spaces surrounded by trees. And I'm going to build a bunch of different things that are going to accommodate this. And this is supposed to be something that you're going to be using with some of Matt's pieces. It's not entirely a standalone yet. I'm going to do more to this and more for this in the expansion. And I don't want to talk about it because the big surprise for the expansion is literally going to make people either cry or set printers on fire or something, and it's going to be awesome. It is going to be so awesome. And I'm always trying to design the most insane thing I possibly can so that you guys have something really wicked cool to play with. But yeah, I was trying to with the previous I'm gonna turn this guy off too. I'm gonna take him and put him out because he's not really gonna work here. So we'll put this guy over here. So if we wanted to make like a pathway, for instance, let's say I had a couple of say had another 100 by 50 in here, and we wanted to walk out that way, we could actually make that work. So you can move between the fighting area or between the open area and move out from that space. I'm actually going to turn this guy off too because he's one too many. I want to make this less cramped, and then I'm going to bring in a tile. I'm going to bring in a stand-in for a ground plane because this is only part of what I'm going to show tonight. I'm not sure how long we're coming up on an hour. So let me see here. I'm going to just grab a block and I'm going to put a block in here. Pushing the wrong button. There we go. So when I've already built ground planes for the content for the trees. I just have to integrate them, which is basically the same thing I have to do with the canopies. You basically come in and you block everything out, and then you attach the parts. All right, so this guy's canopy's touching the ground. That's why this guy is on a his actual part is on like a plinth of sorts. So although we've got trees floating in the sky and it's a little cramped in here, I could see putting this on. No, I could see opening this up and putting this on like a 4x4, and using many tiles instead of just this cramped little space here. So this tile in the center is 200 millimeters by 200 millimeters, which is roughly 8 inches. So if we were on a 4x4 table, I'll just scale this up just a little bit more. We could do a 4x4 table kind of like that. And that's a really tight 4x4 table, but there's probably, I'll make it a little bit bigger. But I could see working through this space. This guy's floating in there. There we go. So some of these guys will get raised up off the ground because of the bases that are going to go with them. But I could see working through this space in a game and really taking advantage of what the trees have to offer for terrain. Because line of sight as well as terrain, and I'm going to turn perspective on. That may look weird to you guys. I work with perspective off because it actually slows down the processing of the computer. But we could essentially come in here and I'm going to do a quick render, see if we can get some shadows. It might not look any better. It might look worse. There we go. So you could use partial setups. I'm gonna build. I usually call them rounders. I call them rounders in Strata, but I need another name for them for just basic tiles. But basic tiles will also have, instead of printing out every tile, we're going to print out a little ramp that comes off the tile so that the tile goes down to the table and gives you a flush look. But this is the intention for what we're doing with this. Basically making it so that you're fighting in a proper forest, or let me not say fighting, you're game playing, you're storytelling in a proper forest space with trees that look like trees instead of like sticks with chewed bubblegum on top of them, which is just embarrassing. I feel bad for anybody that designs that stuff. I know. I'm getting the look from Charles of some people like that. But yeah, this is the idea here with this. I don't know as if I have the other file available, but I'm gonna see if I have the display file for Strata, and I want to bring that up for the rest of the time that we have. We'll try and do some different floor plans because I had somebody ask me to do a different floor plan, and I really just was trying to get the Kickstarter all put together and so on and so forth. I'm going to take a little short break to hit the restroom, and then we'll come back and continue playing with setting up files.
Yeah, Brady, if you were masochistic, you could cover an entire 4x4 or 4x6 table full of tiles, but good God, that's a lot of filament. Again, I'm hypocritical because I have a 6-foot wide Rampage tile castle sitting on my counter in my store right now. It's like 45 pounds of filament.
Marketing material.
That's actually precisely what it is. It's shock and awe on a ridiculous level. Yeah, I think Grove especially. Strata is going to be another like showpiece. I mean, it's going to be huge. You're going to have these Bespin like, not to enrage lawyer cats. It is not Bespin. It is Bespin like. You know, I really see people doing these trees and making clumps of them and having them as nice big scatter terrain pieces instead of having, you know, an entire board that's covered in trees. That said, it would be cool to like go to Adepticon and be like, hey, you're on a forested world, and have the whole damn table be trees. That would be kind of epic. Yeah, I hear you on printer space, Brady. I know that's an issue for a lot of people, and I've talked with Eric about that. That, you know, he likes to do things, and I give him crap about it. You know, I'm going to do this crazy detail, and he tried to explain to me his process one day for how they were going to finish stuff, and it was like, hey, we're gonna print it, and then we're going to spray this thing on it, and then we're going to spray this other thing on it, and then we're going to spray this other 3-part thing on it, and then we're going to finally start painting it. And I'm like, dude, hobbyists ain't got time for that shit. I'm like, you know, not everybody's got a massive, you know, perfect detail printer. Not everybody's got, you know, crazy epoxies and agents that they use to make showpieces. I'm like, it's terrain. It needs to look good, and the better it can look, you know, that's great. But it doesn't need to be so crazy over the top that, you know, you're spending 15 hours to make, you know, one little tree that goes on your table.
Much less spending $50 for extra supplies for a $2 part.
Right. You hear me talking about you, Eric?
No. I don't know what you were talking about.
Fantastic. I was flinging poo about that day that you and Greg tried to explain your like arcane 15-step finishing process for printed parts.
I think you mean me and Kirk.
Was it you and Kirk? I was like,
No.
people ain't got time for that.
Well, Kirk and I are always looking at things from a
from the artiste world.
Well, how do I put this? Kirk is building. Kirk and I are building with Collapse Industries. We're building like what we call a boutique product. We're building finished statues for the hardcore painters, like the guys over at the Styrene Syndicate. That they're building like serious dioramas and statues and finished aircraft and finished vehicles. Those guys are kind of like the audience that we were trying to think of. And you're absolutely right. You know, a little bit of primer on an FDM part, a little bit of paint, you know, can go a long way. And in a lot of cases, you know, again, you're right. You know, a lot of people are not. They're not going to be spending, you know, any more time than they have to, because, you know, it's a balance between the gaming side and the hobby side, you know. So
yeah, I mean, we've talked about that too. Like, I think that's one of the issues. It's really awesome that you can 3D print all of this cool stuff for games, but you get to the point of how do you balance printing all of that awesome stuff and painting it and still being able to play the game that you made all the awesome stuff for.
Yeah. And some people are like you told me the other day, some people are going to want to, they're going to flock things and they're going to go the whole nine. And it's just like, not everybody wants to do that. You know, some people want to print out a pile of plastic, put it on the table and get to gaming. And that's understandable.
Yeah. Hey, are you going to do any like dead trees or trees that have maybe been kind of shot through, blown up?
I could. What I was thinking about doing was I was thinking about producing the core set of trees that look like proper trees, and then I was going to take those exact trees and start breaking them or distressing them and taking them apart. One of my things that I haven't had a chance to test yet is how some of these trees will print without their foliage, because I'm looking for a file because I want to open up one of the strata file I put together for display purposes. Right now, the way that I'm designing them, they're going to print best with their foliage. Um, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to open up I'm going to do the floating rock piece real quick. The answer to your question simply is yes. Okay. But I need to check some things, because there's a part of the pieces that I need to double check before I can commit to doing a tree that doesn't have foliage on it. I know that there are a few people printing trees that don't have foliage on it. I saw some trees on Matt's website that don't have foliage on it. I didn't have time to really inspect them, but it's definitely something to consider. So real quick, I haven't committed to it yet, but this is one of the new floating rocks. This is a standalone floating rock that I was asked to make for stretch goals. I would like to do 2 of these and do this as a stretch goal for my all-in backers. This is just one of 2. So I basically blocked out the vines. Just so you guys know, when you build something when I build anything, it goes through a phase called block out, which is basically you build the core structure. So each one of these parts, each rectangle or square is a polygon. And this is all low-res geometry, and this is the block out stage. This is how I make sure everything has, a visual feel that I'm looking for. And in fact, I'll check it with a silhouette. Let me change this to dark gray. So I'll check the silhouette like this, and I'll see how it reads on the table or in display. And I can also check my balance. Visually speaking, I can check the balance of the part. It's best to do that with perspective off, because you're looking at weight, not anything else. But this is how we check parts, and this is how we start parts. And you guys have seen me do some of this stuff. But the rocks, I mocked up the rocks. I got them sculpted really quickly. And I did this yesterday because I wanted to break from what I was doing. And you can see they're not decimated, but you can see how dense they are. Mm-hmm. They always start dense, and then we decimate them to fit the need of the printer. This will not print as you see it. I'll have to cut this up, and this part will probably come in somewhere between 3 and 5 pieces, so that the printers can handle it. It's smart to cut things up and to consider things. I haven't gone through and double checked any of the vines. This is, like I said, this is the block out phase.
Or in a perfect world, which you're going to hate me for saying this, both 3 and 5, because people like me have big printers. Other people have little printers.
Right. That's the other thing too.
I hate little tiny parts if I don't have to, but I also hate huge parts because I talk out of both sides of my mouth.
Well, I think that you're right, and that's something that you and I talked about before I launched the Kickstarter was accommodating the well, actually, Greg and I talked about it. That's who it was. Greg and I talked about accommodating the large scale printers, because there seems to be a real push for everybody to move to printers like the CR10, which are working on a 300 millimeter bed or larger. I don't see this part being taller than 300 millimeters, but to accommodate certain things, I need to be aware of how I'm going to cut it. So, for instance, this place right here, and I just saw this place right here, I really should put in another, whoa, that's not what I want. I should put in another vine right here, because I know that there's going to be, the angle, the transition is too sharp. So if I put in,
it's going to make printers cry.
Right, but the easy fix for that is to put in another small vine, a dangly, if you will, a little bit bigger than that, and give it in an accommodating vine that is going to sort of like bridge the gap. And you can still have a hole in there, we found, but you need to sort of give it more structural integrity. And this is one of the things that I have to do. I have to constantly go and look through the parts, see what's going to work, see what's going to fail. And these aren't even sculpted yet. And the other thing too is I could grab the vine and pull it in. But you can see how this one here, this is a good example of that. This one here, which I'm gonna mask off so you can see There we go. This one here is this beautiful arc, but it's being partially supported by these other ones. And this is partly design, it's partly aesthetic, it's partly trying to figure out the functionality of a given part. One of the things that we're constantly doing when we're doing molds and casts is we're asking where the bubble goes. Well, in the case of the FDM style 3D printers, it's what's your minimum attack angle, and the minimum attack angle is 45 degrees from the 90, meaning that if you draw a plumb line straight down to the bed, you can go 45 degrees off that plumb line before parts start to fail or need support. So it's one of the rules that I have to follow with a design, and I spend a lot of time checking this both with my eyes, but occasionally I'll bring in a ruler or a tool that I use to indicate or to search for parts, or to search for potential failure of parts. Sorry, I need to learn how to speak. So this is one of the parts that I'm
do it in a crazy non-artistic digital way and just test print it and see if it craps on itself. But
which we did. I have three distinct locations on the floating rocks for strata that Greg was like, this part failed, this part failed, this part over here failed. I'm like, I'm sorry, Greg. And he's like, just fix it. I'm like, I know how to fix it. Sometimes a part needs to be thicker. Sometimes a part needs to have a more gentle curve, or curve more aggressively upwards so that it supports itself. Sometimes we need to drop down a piece, like a vine or a strut or something, or a what do they call it, or a buttress, to give a given shape, physical support, either without having to add printed supports. We try and avoid the printed supports because even on these pieces, which are highly organic, I don't want to mar the surface any more than I have to. It's not that I'm afraid of supports, but until FDM finds a more clever or a cleaner way of adding supports to a structure, I'm going to continually look for and work towards supportless printing. Sadly, that means in some cases, Charles, we have to cut up the models more to accommodate the complexity of a given part.
I totally agree, though. I would rather have something that has to be printed in pieces without supports than to print something that's huge and crazy with supports, because, you know, if you really have your printer dialed in and you're careful, you can clean it up and have it look good. But when you put that over a wide spectrum of different people, different abilities, different printers, you don't want that. That'll give you a product that's subpar.
Yeah, and there's nothing worse than having that one poor guy who bought the product and is having a complete mental breakdown because nothing looks good. So,
and I just saw in chat an 1100 millimeter span height printer. What the hell beast is that? That's just crazy talk.
No, well, yeah, it is crazy talk, but it's a custom built one we made in-house. Took forever to get working correctly, but it does fantastic tall sculptures.
But wouldn't you cry if it like failed at 900 millimeters?
That's an understatement.
Oh God!
And it has happened.
I cry when something fails at 50 millimeters. Good God!
that's
there
nuts.
Pictures? I don't even care what prints on the printer. Is there printer porn? I want to see this thing.
Yeah, you got to show this if you're going to talk about it.
I'll get some pictures from the shop and post them.
All right, so this thing is a bit of a bear. It's all in parts. You do not, just so people that are watching know, you do not have to print out all of the tiles and build everything in the exact same way from floor to floor. In fact, the whole product was never designed to go that way. I may not be able to do, yeah, this is going to be a bit of a bear. Let me see if I can pull off the top components and separate them. So real quick here, I'm going to focus in on a couple pieces. I know everybody got to see these on the.
Eric, can't you show the bottom?
Yeah, we can do that. So real quick here, this is a console or a column console. Most of these guys are called columns because that's what we're using them for. But their aesthetic is to give you a console. So this is the bottom of a standard trapezoid tile. It's got the open lock tiles in it. We've actually been testing these. Actually, I found out why they weren't working originally. Me being extra smart, I cropped this space in too tightly, and the open lock tiles have a foot on them, so that the open lock clips have a foot on them, and I had to open up all this space, and then I was aggravated to no end. I'm really pleased with the tiles overall, but this was just my stupid self just getting. I was like, oh, I want this extra tight. And I didn't check it against the clip. And then I found out about it, and I had to go back through every single tile and fix every single tile. But I'm gonna just focus in on this big one over here, or this one here, whichever one it's gonna let me focus on. There we go. Focus on this one.
What's the durability on those, clicking them together and then taking them apart and back and forth?
Most of the people I know that are using these tiles are absolutely in love with them, but there's some people, Greg, for instance, Greg really likes to glue down some of his tiles, especially like core tiles. From what I understand, they're really pretty durable.
Okay.
So
I beat the hell out of mine, so I'm of both mindsets. I treat them. Again, we'll use air quotes here because I don't want to get sued. They're like adult Legos for gamers. If there's something specific that I want to build out of them, I will glue it together. But if it's something that I know is going to be modular and I'm going to play with it and mess with it, I'm going to leave it unglued and be able to pop it in and out. And they're easy. I mean, it's fantastic. The clips break because they're almost designed to be the fragile point. The tiles are rock solid.
Yeah. We did something really unusual here. I had to build to build these discs. I had to build a round structure. And if Matt were to ask me for my trapezoid, I'd give it to him in a heartbeat because he was nice enough to let me license the pieces. And I really wish Matt could come to the hangout, but sadly he's in the almost exact opposite time zone from me, being over in, I believe, is it New Zealand or Australia? Does anybody know?
He's in New Zealand.
Yeah, okay. So it's pretty much the opposite time zone from me. But I wanted to make a round tile. Since I was looking at Cloud City, and I was looking at Camino, and I was looking at Tau, and I really wanted that feeling for this world. The options were take a square tile and then fit it in a round space, which wouldn't have been a bad move, or use a hexagon, which I thought was smarter. It leaves me a few options, and especially after talking to Charles, who corrected my stupidity by showing me that I could use a trapezoid instead of a whole bunch of triangles, which is what I thought I was going to be doing. We managed to come up with this system, and you can see the color code here. It makes a lot of sense. The edge tiles have a 3D printable dovetail in them, and I'm going to show that to you guys. I'll get a closer look at that in just a second. The dovetail is really, really stable. It's kind of long because both the rounders. This is the proper rounder. This is to round out the space. This dovetail works really, really nicely, and it's a little long because we have an extension that allows you to slide in a dovetail and connect it with this guy here. And you don't need to connect both sides, but I thought it'd be nice to have just that little bit of extra support with these. These guys actually work just fine without dovetails, but they have a shaft going through. So this you get a male to male connector, and it slides through, and it adds just a little bit of extra support if you really need to. But for the most part, if you're using the stanchions, they're really, really structurally sound. They're very, very light, and these actually print in. If you got a big printer, you're going to get 3 parts. If you got a small printer, you got to print them in multiple parts. And I think I can show that here. Yep, there we go. So let's focus on this one. So you can see, and I turn off the wireframe. You can see the color code sets it up like this. And this guy should be, that part should have a left and right part. You can't print off the base, so it should be 5 pieces for a small bed printer. Small bed printer for me is 150 millimeter beds, but this is a nice tall part, and each space is 150 millimeters. Each gap or each floor, and the reason we made it so tall was. We looked at Star Wars Legion, and we looked at the medium-size Warhammer pieces, and we looked at a lot of different stuff. And some of these pieces are coming in at 70 and 80, and in one case, 90 millimeters. How are you going to get your hands in there to move your pieces around? How are you going to play with them?
You forgot the people with giant, meaty sausage fingers. They have to be able to get in there to get their shiny little models.
Right.
Yep.
Right. So we actually did it. We sat down, we measured it out, we played with the idea, we did it on paper. Some of these are going to be a little snug, but for the most part, you should be good to go. So if you look at this real quickly, this has got a reduction on it. And of course, now the software is freaking out a little bit because there's a lot of geometry on the screen. But this is a small disc. This is really just meant to be sort of like a connection point. And then these are the large discs. And if you look at the trapezoids are 101 millimeters on one side, which is to go with Matt's math, and then 50 millimeters on the other side. So so this is 50 millimeters. This is 100 millimeters, 50 millimeters, and then whatever the extra is. And I don't recall exactly what the extra is, but this is a good amount of space. I think the full disc. Don't quote me on this because I don't have it in front of me. I think the full disc might be 15 inches across. In fact, hold on. Let me. I can give a loose guesstimation because these parts aren't really lined up properly. They're just sort of slapped together.
I think it was just short of 15 inches if it was the big one.
Yeah. I just want to double check real quick.
They're substantial. They're so cool.
Well, the whole concept came up with because I wanted to do a Cloud City, but I also was having this conversation with either Chuck or Greg, and I was like, remember when we played the game The Ground is Lava as kids, and it just went from there. It just kind of snowballed. So I think it's giving me measurements of 300 millimeters in the X and 360 in the Z, and I think the height is 360 because of the antennas. So the disc is roughly 3 millimeters across, which is about 12 inches. So it's substantial. You should be able to put squads together on here and on the bridges. These tiles I'm most proud of. Well, not these specific tiles, but this blue one is what I'm looking at. This is the bridge connector, and this is, again, it's 100 millimeters on this side, or 101 millimeters on the connector side, and then 101 millimeters on the other connector side. But this allows you to extend bridges off of these tiles. I mean, honestly, I'm really, really pleased with all this. The one thing that's on the Kickstarter that I haven't shown anybody in real time is the promenades, which are massive tiles that get cut into sections, and they're all meant to give you a big open space. Let me see if I can open one of those. It may not be scaled though. Sometimes what I have to do is I have to build the part small because ZBrush doesn't handle real-world scales real well. Sometimes I build the part small and then I scale it up or fit it to a pre-existing tile, like, for instance, Matt's open lock tiles. It's just an extra step that I have to deal with because I'm building sculptural pieces primarily over rigid geometry pieces or buildings. So let me see if I can find the promenade pieces really quickly. Do we have any questions from the chat? I'm really surprised it's been so quiet.
Everybody's just talking about the products as you show them. No real questions so far. Just everybody enjoying themselves.
That's awesome. That really is
We're
awesome.
all still trying to wrap our head around a printer with a 1100 millimeter span.
I do not.
And apparently the fact that you don't have facial hair as well.
Who, me?
Yeah, would be you.
Yeah, that was one of the comments.
Oh, I can't. If I need to wear a respirator, I need to be clean shaven. Plus, because I'm losing my hair, or at least it's thinning, I shave my head.
Dude, see this? I got the thinning. You need some of the magnificence. Don't blame it on the CPAP.
I used to be rocking a really nice goatee and a very thin beard across my jawline, but I had a bad experience with my respirator, and I got chewed out by my supervisor because we were doing fiberglass, and I from then on I shaved my face. So
it's just a little popcorn lung between friends. Don't be a baby. Grow a beard.
So this is one of the large specialty tiles. I don't have the clips on this yet, but this is going to be fairly substantial. I'm going to try and double check the. I'm going to try and double check the part size here. So this might be way off. That looks about right. So this is going to be 500 millimeters in the long direction, and it's just supposed to be a really nice big space. Let me see if I don't know if I'm hoping I have one of the other tiles. Here it is. This one's another nice big one. This one I think has been made into a single part. Yeah, this one's also pretty big. And you have these nice little consoles on them. I'm gonna have to build a little. I'm gonna have to build a little part here on that part. But this one is another big one, and these are, yeah, this one's 300 by 300. So you're getting a 1 foot length and 1 foot this way, give or take a little bit. Yeah, 330 by 3, almost 300 exactly. So I think it's a foot. It's a foot to this outer wall to the bottom edge, and just over a foot from end to end. And this is meant to give you like a couple of large walkways between the standard platforms. And these guys are based on 150 millimeter measurements and cut up that way. I really want to show you the other one. Where is the?
So not gonna lie, when Eric and I first started talking about this, this more than anything made me kind of all tingly inside as a gamer, because forever, no matter what the game is, you basically have a board, there's some stuff on it, and all of your stuff is on the board. There's some Necromunda stuff and a little bit of stuff where you've got walkways. This would literally be the first time I can think of in the 30 plus years that I've done miniatures gaming where you wouldn't actually be doing most of your stuff on the game board, because you're going to actually have platforms that are substantial enough to do things at an elevated level that just, like I said, it makes me all tingly inside.
I don't know if I should share this or not, but I'm gonna jump the gun on this, and you guys can't hold a gun to my head on this, but there may be a half measurement system coming out as an expansion. So right now we've got 12 inches, but somebody asked me if we can have a 3-inch lift. So you may be able to have some 3-inch lifts that may. I'm going to look into doing some ramps. Mostly this system currently comes with elevators, because I thought that would be the smarter move, since it's supposed to be either a high fantasy or a high sci-fi city. Either the elves run it, or it's the lost city of the Tau, or it's the the Star Wars, factory cities like Bespin or Camino. But the idea is that every world I create, whether it's Strata, Scorch, Thorn, all of the worlds are most of the stuff that I put out so far has been core world stuff, and so we're going to be looking into doing. I'm going to be looking into doing expansions because I'm kind of a one-man show. So I'm going to be looking into doing expansions that enrich the world and give new life to an existing world. So if Chuck prints out everything twice, and in some cases multiple times because you can't print out the city without a lot of trapezoids. He's going to want to play that game, and he's going to have lots of flexibility with it. But I want to keep that board or that content fresh. So a small expansion of, say, 20 odd tiles or 20 odd additions is something that I'm going to be looking into for this world as well as others. It's not the next thing I'm going to be putting out. The next thing I'm going to be putting out, I'm not talking about yet. But every world has got a core content unit, and then it's got expansions. Before I go into this next tile, does anybody have anything else that they want to bring up? Because this is the last big tile, and I think that this is probably the last thing I should talk about before we close up.
I can just say that this is the first time I'm seeing this stuff, and I'm blown away, Eric. This stuff's incredible.
Thanks, man. I'm not gonna lie. You know what, David? This has been both a challenge and a pleasure, and in some ways a nightmare.
Yeah.
It's more than I ever thought it could be, is basically what it comes down to. By the way, guys, this tile isn't finished. This is just beyond the block-up phase. I've got to do a few more things to it. I've got to put in the open lock system to make it compatible. But it is the biggest promenade, and I'm really excited for this piece. But yeah, no, David, thank you, man. I'm going to run the measurement on this just so I remember what it is. All right, so it's 457 from left to right.
Wow.
So it's really nice and big. So if we go ahead and drop in, I'm going to drop in a cylinder for a base. It'll take me a second to scale it, but I'm going to drop in a cylinder for a base. So there's a cylinder. I'm going to have to extract that guy and then double check its measurements because we gotta do the stuffs. Split hidden. There's a number of ways to check measurements, guys, but I'm going to do it quick and dirty here and just sort of eyeball it. So this is 15 by 15 or 16 by 16 by 16 millimeters. Bases are about 28 to 29.
Eric, there's a way easier way to do this, Haas. Go onto Matt's site and download Scaly. He made a little dude that's scaled out for 32 millimeter, 28 millimeter, 15 millimeter, etc.
Right.
Just import it and you're done.
Right.
Done.
I'm looking for Scaly.
Yeah, I believe so. Here, I'll ping you the link.
I know that existed.
Yeah, it's literally on every page. It's the little gray guy. How to scale models before printing.
Oh, okay.
Click on that. It's a little like World War II dude, but it's in scale, so that'll at least show people.
Right on. Just a second. Normally what I do, guys, is I'll either have a cylinder or something. Did you send me a link? Chuck, did you send me a link, or did you just... What am I doing here?
Yeah, hold on.
Okay. By the way, it's very sad that I've only talked to Matt a handful of times, but every experience I've had with the guy has just been friggin' awesome. I really wish that I could talk with him a little bit more often. All right, so add cart. Good cart.
If you live under a rock and have never seen printable scenery, one of the awesome things that they did was that they open sourced all of this thing. So anything you see that's open lock or whatnot is using what he calls their tessellation system. So you can go and download all of the base tiles and then slather whatever texture you want on them, and they will click in and shape with everybody else's stuff.
Come on, where's the checkbox?
It's down at the bottom.
Oh, is that where it is? Then why is it sending me the error at the top? Got my name in here. Seriously, I gotta capitalize my own name?
Let me just send you the STL. I have it.
Yeah, go ahead and do that, please. I'm
Give me a
sorry.
sec. That's fine. Go back to your RT stuff.
Well, I'm just scaling this. I was going to scale this part, but yeah. So what I'm going to do here is I just wanted to get a part in here before we close out, so that you guys can see that the promenades are pretty large. Since I still have the floor plan that I built for the display, I'll drop it in both systems, so you guys can see what's going on. By the way, this was the first. While I'm waiting, this was the first center column that I produced, and it prints in 2 parts. But Greg was so excited. He was like, and Greg is very chill. His excitement is kind of like low key, but he was like, oh yeah, those cables printed out really nice. It looks really good. You know, I was like, he was joking with me. I ended up this part uses I do have a couple of things. I have alignment pegs in my parts. This part uses the hexagonal alignment peg, and I accidentally sent him the part that I used to make the holes instead of the peg, and he jammed it in there and snapped them in half. So he was telling me he's gonna have to drill them out. And I'm just like, just throw some glue on it, dude. But this part printed out really, really nicely. And I've had a couple of people tell me that they're going to print out just that part and have that as a piece on the table. And I was a little disappointed hearing that. But you know, everybody's going to play with what they want to play with. Matt, how did you send me the little guy?
I tried doing it in Facebook, which was stupid. I'm going to email it to you.
Oh, there it is. I got it.
Okay.
I think. Give me a second.
It's a zip file. Are you? It's a normal zip file. It's not some fancy artsy zip program. It's just a zip file.
I'm using 7-zip, and you're going to have to suck it up. We ended up getting. By the way, I know that you give me grief. My boss uses a Mac, and he has no problems with 7-zip. I don't know why you're the one that has problems with the 7-zip.
Well, I don't know that I downloaded a program to deal with it.
Which one do I want? Do I want the 30mm?
Yeah, I thought there was a 28, but there's not. So I guess take the 30mm. That'll be the closest to, like, if it's.
Yeah, well, Star Wars. I think Star Wars is using 30mm, and then
GW is like 28 heroic, which might as well be 30mm.
Yeah, you know, they're all trying to. I do not understand why. You know, there's enough space that we can all get along. You know, they don't have to, like. I don't know. I'm sorry. This is a conversation for private, not a conversation for a hangout. Okay, it's an STL. That's why I'm having problem. Remember, I'm importing an STL. Seaside 30mm. Nice. All right. Look at that base. All right, so we're gonna drop this in on my promenades so you guys can see this. And there he is. And there he is. So this I'm gonna make I'm going to make a what you call it, squad. I just totally jacked that up. Let me try that again. There we go. Now we got a squad. So there's a squad on the promenade, and then we'll just do a counter squad. We'll do another set of combatants over here, so you guys can see. And we'll turn our perspectives on. So you've got plenty of room to maneuver around and bring you guys in. And even if these guys were a hair bigger, you'd still be able to move them around and have them fighting across these larger spaces.
But the most epic thing is this is, a foot off the table.
Yeah, I know.
It just looks like, oh, we're on a platform. No, you're a foot up.
Right. And the walls are going to give you hard cover in almost every situation. They were originally designed to give you only partial cover, but you should be able to shoot over them in most cases. I'm hoping that no one's going to freak out, but it is going to be it's going to be a very different way of playing. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to drop them in those two squads. I'm going to drop them in the new or the display environment, and come on now. Like I said before, the software is kind of losing its mind because I've got probably close to 1 billion polygons on the screen here right now. But so there's the large platforms, and you can see a squad's going to move through that space pretty nicely. I'm going to actually swing us around and put us on the small platform. Before I had this guy, I actually did this with like little cylinders to represent my space. So you'll be able to move most of your small squads through and around the small platforms. Some of the bigger guys, you're going to have to lift them up over the walls, which is a bit of a shame, but there's nothing I can really do about that because I needed that connector to work right. I don't think that's
be a barrier that you can't take big things through.
Right.
Oh well.
Right, and that was kind of the idea, but I just, I'm afraid of hearing somebody bitch and moan at me after putting in so much effort. So there you go, guys.
They're gamers. They're gonna bitch and moan no matter how perfect or awesome it is.
Well, I'm gonna print out a postcard that says "Shave your neck beard" if I start getting harassed. So. But before I close out,
you got that dovetail. See that dovetail right there in the. No, go back. You have the dovetail right in the middle of the screen. You know what that dovetail screams out, Eric?
What?
That dovetail screams out, "Make a stretch goal that fits in me, Eric. Make a stretch goal that fits in me."
I've got plenty of things that are going to fit in it.
I agree.
All right, fine. I'll make an end cap. I'll make an end cap. I'm not making any turrets though for Strata because I had a conversation with Charles about that, and I'm not doing that for this particular product. Not that Charles decides what I make.
Cool architectural stretch goals that are just different, so you could have different things in different dovetails.
Well, one of the pieces I was going to produce. Okay, calm yourself. All right, stop it.
Eric hates stretch goals, by the way.
I loathe stretch goals. They are the most underhanded way of
But
doing
backers
business.
love them.
Backers need to be shown the light that they are the evil that they really are.
They're saying in chat, stretch goals.
Anyway, how many people we got in chat still?
There's still 5 people here.
Okay, we got 5 people here.
Plus all of us.
Okay, plus all of us. Does anybody have anything they want to ask before I close out for the night? Because I've got more work to do, and I've only got half an hour before I crash. But I want to answer any questions before I close out the hangout and make sure everybody's happy and what have you.
Nothing here.
Nothing here. All right.
Where do you be?
Chat's quiet too.
I told you where babies come from. Oh, geez. Anyway, by the way, this is one of my favorite pieces, this rocket engine, and that was so much fun to make. It's really not a rocket engine, it's more of an exhaust. It's a great big ugly exhaust. All right, so yeah, guys, this is what we're working on. There's still a lot I have to do. I want to say thank you for everybody for coming out. I want to thank my guests the most, because I know how much of a pain in the butt it is sometimes to hang out for 2 hours and talk about what's being designed. Just so those of you know, everything is designed on paper first. Everything is designed on paper first, whether it is stuff like this for the early stages of strata, trying to figure out the look and the feel, or stuff like this where I was really trying to do my research on what the tiles should look like for Grove. Guys, I don't do it in the computer first. I trained as an illustrator before I got into 3D.
Amazing if the Kickstarter had sketches, even on napkins. I bet people would eat that stuff up.
I was thinking about making an art book, but it just kind of cutting my legs out in front of me. Actually, this was the Chuck will remember this. I'm teasing him, by the way. I'm not serious. Chuck will remember this. This was the sketch that Chuck and I looked at when I was trying to figure out my math for the pieces. And this black mark here is when Chuck was like, "Why don't you just make it a trapezoid?" And I was like,
I wanted to get in my car and drive from Oregon to the East Coast and just pummel him. I was like, we are not doing all these damn triangles. I'm like, no.
It makes perfect sense. And it was like I said, the forest through the trees. You do it on paper because it's cheap on paper. It doesn't cost you much. In fact, I'll just show you one more sketch real quick here. And I was really hoping we'd have a few more people, but I'm happy we have the people we have. But this is some of the stuff that I was thinking about for Strata. This is like the early designs for Strata's cores and how big the dishes were going to be and the different things that were going to hold them up. This was like an early stanchion over here, this weird duck looking thing.
These are the early things that made me tingly inside.
There may still
you could make a 6'4", 350-pound tingly by showing him sketches. You got something.
Exactly. I am most excited for getting this kit in people's hands and hopefully seeing games done with it. There will be add-ons for this. There are things about this that we're going to have to fix because even though I did all the math and I did bounce it off of Chuck and I did bounce it off of Greg Janung. If you guys don't know Greg Janung, you need to check out his YouTube channel. He does most of my test printing. If there is something that comes up, I'm going to have to make a mod for it because although we did all the math based off of the open lock tiles, we are using a hexagonal system to direct the different directions. So you'll have an east and west, but then you'll have a northeast and a northwest and a southeast and a southwest. So those angles may cause problems in the future that we may not have thought about. But we did a lot of math. Well, I did a lot of math and a lot of sketches and a lot of checking.
I actually saw one when you were flipping things around. I was like, oh, that's not going to work. We're going to have to figure something out.
Yeah, like I said, there's going to be a mod that's going to come out for specialty things. So anyway, I'm going to close the hangout. I want to say thank you to those of you that came out. And I want to thank the guests who were helping me fill up the dead space because I know we're not playing music on the YouTube chat. But thank you guys, and we'll see you next week.